I travel by car quite a bit, going back and forth to Kentucky to see my kids. But last week, I drove to Chicago to celebrate my father's 80th birthday and tend to my ailing mom. As always, I left Winnetka, a northern suburb of Chicago, at 1 p.m. to avoid rush hour traffic. I took the toll road. It's approximately 35 miles to my mom's house. At 5:30, I was still on the road in the midst of a traffic jam, and it wasn't even a holiday. Today, I want to offer to you a holiday traffic report. My report draws upon a couple of reports from the ancient world. The first one comes from the prophet Isaiah, who is offering a traffic report to those who have been living in exile in Babylon for several decades. Like many reporters of his time, Isaiah believed the exile was God's punishment for their previous sins. But now the punishment has come to an end, and they are allowed to return home. Isaiah receives his reporting assignment from God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and proclaim to her that her service is at an end. Her guilt is expiated. Indeed, she has received from the hand of the Lord double for all her sins. But this will not be an easy trip home. There were no weather or traffic reports to help people in that day. There probably wasn't even a clear path through the treacherous Arabian desert, much less well-developed highways. It was a harsh and rocky wilderness. Food and water will be scarce, and there's always the danger of running into marauders and other bad guys. Therefore, Isaiah tries to get them ready for the trip by telling them God will be with them and will make the journey less dangerous and even less exhausting than it normally would be. I can just imagine Isaiah standing before the people, offering a traffic report as they ready themselves for the trip, crying to them in a loud voice, "In the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight in the wasteland a highway for our God. Every valley shall be filled in, every mountain and hill shall be made low. The rugged land shall be made a plain, the rough country a broad valley." That's a pretty bold traffic report. They will make it home, Isaiah is saying, because the highway they will carve out of the desert will be as straight as possible. There will be no detours, no 40-year wilderness wandering, such as their ancestors suffered centuries earlier. God will give them so much strength and endurance for the trip that the rugged terrain of hills and mountains and valleys will feel like level ground. Perhaps his report is overly optimistic, yet Isaiah's job is to make sure the people get on their way. Centuries later, the early Christians used Isaiah's words in reference to another traffic reporter or prophet named John the Baptist. Like Isaiah of old, John's role was also to prepare the way of the Lord, make straight his paths. He's talking, of course, about Jesus the Christ. The context is different, yet there is one thing both stories have in common: the wilderness. Isaiah's report covers the Arabian desert, whereas John the Baptist is a wilderness prophet who is called to prepare the way for the Messiah of God, Jesus the Christ. Our context today is also different, and yet, doesn't our journey through the holiday season often feel like wandering in the wilderness, looking for the Messiah of God? Doesn't this feel like rough terrain sometimes? There are highs and lows and peaks and valleys. Sometimes the holiday highway runs smooth, and sometimes there are roadblocks, detours, potholes, and traffic jams. Yes, traffic jams. I realize we bring this up every year, and nothing ever really changes. Isn't it true that the Advent Christmas season is so busy that it feels like we're always in heavy traffic, like we are always in a spiritual rush hour? And therefore, doesn't it feel like a traffic jam? Traffic jams are inevitable. So, how do we travel down this holiday highway without getting spiritual road rage? How do we do this without running out of gas? One thing we can do when we are stuck in holiday traffic is to reflect on the four wheels of the Advent season: hope, peace, love, and joy. We can designate each one of our tires as one of those four themes. First, as we're traveling down the holiday highway and we start to remember our loved ones who are no longer here to celebrate the holidays with us, let us reflect on our left front tire and think about the hope that we have as followers of God's Messiah. As the Apostle Paul said, "We would not have you ignorant, brothers and sisters, concerning those who are asleep, that you may not grieve as others do, who have no hope. For since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, through Jesus, God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep." Second, as we're traveling down the holiday highway and we start to think of all the violence and war that people from all over the globe have to endure at this time, let us reflect on our right front tire and think about the peace that we have as followers of God's Messiah. Remember the words of Paul in his letter to the Philippians: "And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Third, as we're traveling down the holiday highway and we start to think of all the hatred and bad will in the world today, let us reflect on our right rear tire and think about the love that we have as followers of God's Messiah, the one who taught us to love God, love our neighbors, and love our enemies. Finally, as we're traveling down the holiday highway and we start to think about all the despair and depression and sorrow in our own lives, and the lives of our loved ones. Let us reflect on our left rear tire and think about the joy that is ours to have as followers of God's Messiah. As Jesus promised us, so you have pain now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take your joy from you. This is your holiday traffic report for today. The highways and byways are crowded, so please drive safely and remember your destination this season: hope, peace, love, and joy. Amen.